Check. Everybody good out there? What's going on out there, everybody? Figured I'd jump on tonight. Haven't been on in a little while. Figured I'd jump on tonight and just start talking a little bit about some off-season stuff, what I'm planning on doing, things that I'm going to be looking at, why I'm going to be looking at it. Our season ended 2 weeks ago, so we didn't have practice last week or this week, so I had some time to kind of go back and self-scout some things, evaluate some things, go back and look at some numbers and kind of figure out where we need to be in the future, the direction we need to go. It was interesting. We made a bunch of changes throughout the season on both sides of the ball. I think that was the kind of the interesting thing for me, at least during the pandemic stuff, was we had a direction that we thought we were going in, and obviously without a spring game and a kickoff classic, we didn't get a chance to see any of it. We didn't get a chance to see, what we liked, what we didn't like, how our kids were with what we were running. And when you get thrown into the season, all of a sudden, you're not figuring anything out until 3 games in. So, next thing you know, we're 2 or 3 games in and we start figuring out what we can and can't do and what our kids can and can't do. And, we changed from, hey, Collar, how you doing, bud? We changed from our, we went from odd stuff to even stuff towards the end of the year. And, we got to a point, during the middle of the season where we were playing a ton more man because we didn't think we could handle the pattern match stuff, split field coverage stuff. And then towards the end of the year, went back to the split field stuff and just said, hey, let's get back to our roots. Let's get back to what we do and figure out the kids that can figure this out, figure out a way to teach it better and to kind of maybe narrow some things down. So, offensively, we were started in the offseason, put, our O-line coach did a great job putting all of our eggs into a inside zone, wide zone basket. And that's all the training he did when we were able to get back on the field and do some football work and some, when we were actually able to start coaching our kids again, everything was geared towards inside zone and wide zone. And then 3 games into the year, we can't, it's not working. It's hard. Our O-linemen are having a hard time figuring it out. And 3 games into the season on offense, we switched to gap schemes, and we end up with a sophomore tailback that's a really good player. He ends up with, something like 12 to 1,300 yards in the last 6 or 7 games we played. He was averaging about 190 yards a game. And, we got ourselves to a point where we won 4 of the last 6. We won 4 of the last 6 games that we played. 2 of the losses were in the last. We lost by 4 points with 4 minutes left in the game. We gave up a score with 4 minutes left in the game. And then we lost a game 35-32, gave up a touchdown with 8 seconds left. So we got ourselves to a position where after the shaky start, we kind of made some, we made some adjustments and some, I guess you could say, wholesale changes that I would never really fully recommend for anybody, out there to in the middle of the season to wholesale change anything. But, it was a type of season where we felt like in Florida where everybody was going to make the playoffs. So about 3 weeks into the season, maybe 4 weeks into the season, I don't know, somewhere along the line, we already knew who our draw was. We knew that we drew don't know what that is, David. We knew who our draw was in the playoffs. We knew that we had a home playoff game, and so it was one of those years where to me as a head coach, it was okay to change some things throughout the year because we weren't worried about winning or losing games to make the playoffs. We were worried about, we had a young team, a lot of kids that had never played before, so we were worried about getting the right guys worried about getting the right guys uh, on the field and then getting them taught the way that we needed to teach them. So it was an interesting year for us. And now moving, when you move to the off season, I don't know if you guys are like I am, but I know in coaching, you love the on-field stuff and you love games and everything else. But to me, I love the off season as much as I love, uh, or almost as much as I love in-season stuff, because now this is where you're doing all your research and this is where you're looking at at schemes and different things and what's new out there and what's the flavor of the month and do you want to what direction do you want to go in the off season and um, so to me it's always an exciting time, especially December, January. It's kind of some downtime from the football season. You don't really have our weightlifting season starts in January, and then most of our off-season football conditioning stuff starts in January. So, like right now, I have my kids in class, and we'll continue to lift in class, and now we'll start going gradually heavier and heavier with our lifts now that the season's over. But as far as like after school and mandatory off-season activity stuff, we're not doing any of that right now. So for me, it's a good time to get some free time and study some things and like I said, go back and look at the things that we need to take care of on offense and defense, and really every year kind of reevaluate going into next season and say, hey, what do we need to do to win football games? What do we need? How much do we need to carry? What do we need to defend? What do we need to be able to do on offense? What do we need to do on special teams? So you can hopefully at some point, and I know it's a constantly changing and evolving journey, but at some point you'd like to have kind of an idea as a head coach to say, look, we only need in all three phases, let's only work, especially in the off season leading up to it. Let's be cost effective and time efficient and work on the things that we need to do to win high school football games. Because the only problem with the off season studying things sometimes is, when you're studying things that are going on at a college game or the NFL game, they have so many other things to worry about. Like for us this year, we had games where the playoff game that we just lost 2 weeks ago, the team that we lost to threw the ball 3 times. And one of those was an interception. We played multiple games this season where the other team threw the ball less than 8 or 10 times. And now a lot of that has to do with the fact that you got to be able to stop the run. And if you can't stop the run, then obviously they don't have to throw the ball. But our dilemma sometimes in high school is so much different than the guys that we're studying that I think sometimes we have to sit back and say, all right, look, what do we really need to be effective? What do we need to win? So what was the main things you look for when you were changing your scheme in the offseason? Like, how do you know what you're changing? It's a tough question, Kyler. Was actually just talking with a friend of mine about this. You've got to kind of find a way to figure out if what you're doing schematically is poor or if what you're doing is poor because you don't have the players to do it. So for us, schematically, the wide zone and the inside zone stuff, schematically for us, it wasn't poor. It was the fact that we didn't have the kids to execute that scheme. So, we had some linemen that were first-year players and didn't have a lot of time in a zone scheme and, IDing the fronts and then re-IDing, when things move. It was just a lot for those guys, and gap schemes made it a lot easier. So it wasn't really on the offensive side with inside zone and wide zone. It wasn't schematically flawed. It was schematically flawed for the kids that we had, and it was schematically flawed for not having an off season to go through what the issues were going to be. So, gap schemes allowed us to kind of simplify some things and just put the ball in our best players' hands and then take some throws and make the quarterback make some decisions on, what are good run numbers, what are not good run numbers, where do we have angles and leverage and numbers. And so it, obviously it ended up working out pretty good for us. Defensively, it's really tough defensively to look at things schematically sometimes and say, hey, schematically we need to make a change, whether it be from even to odd, odd to even, one high to two high, middle of the field open to middle of the field closed. It's hard sometimes on defense because if you don't have the right personnel in high school, the gap between two teams can be so far that it's hard to really tell, is it what you're doing? That's the problem. Is it how you're doing what you're doing? Or is it how you're teaching or not teaching the techniques and fundamentals of things? So, so I look at it this way: like when we went back to an even front, we towards the end of the year we started playing a ninth grader at three technique, or at least rotating in at three technique, and then in the playoff game he probably played 50% of the night or something like that, if not more. And in our other three techniques that we had, we went from odd back to even. We really didn't have the interior bodies that we needed, so we were playing with some some lighter bodies on the inside, and we were playing teams that were fairly good running gap schemes. So the three technique was getting doubled, and there's a lot of times if we don't move him, there's times where he's getting blocked 8-10 yards down the field on a double team. Things that you very rarely see at the college level or at the NFL level. So when you've got a three technique that's being double teamed and he's being moved 8-10 yards off the ball, I don't know if you can really schematically look at what you're doing and say, that's never going to work. We had to move the three technique a bunch and try and avoid some of those double teams, and we had to protect them, with some movement and going back to playing field and boundary stuff and changing where the bubble was going to be and where the three was, and then bringing some pressure with it and some D-line movement. So there's always ways as coaches to protect that, but I think it's hard sometimes to look at a certain scheme if your talent is not as good as the opponent in certain games. It's hard to look at a scheme and say that that's not good or bad. So that's an interesting question that you bring up, Kyle. We have a few multi-sport athletes. That's why I have 5 weight training classes that I teach, and I like trying to get as many, if not all, my kids in my classes so that we can lift during the day, so that in the off season, if they're not part of the weightlifting team, if they are a basketball player, a wrestler, a track kid, a soccer player, a baseball player, they can go play anything they want to play and still get their lifts in during the day. So you're not having to chase a kid and say, hey, man, it's going to be tough for you to you're falling behind. You're not lifting. All these other guys are lifting. You're playing multiple sports, which is good. And I don't frown upon you playing multiple sports, but just understand when you come back, all these other guys are going to be so much bigger and stronger. And, if they're a good enough player and a good enough athlete, they figure it out without being in the weight room with the other guys. But a lot of times the marginal players get left behind by some other players. So that's the great thing about having weight training classes is I can, I've always been a proponent of multiple sports. I've never one time told a kid that it's got to make a decision, football or nothing. I've always wanted my kids to represent the school and do good things for the school. I always wanted my kids to get as much experience. You only go through high school one time, and now we're in a world where things have been taken away from these kids. Don't get to 30, 40 years old and look back and say you wish you could have done different things. So I always encourage my guys to play multiple sports, and I like having multiple sport athletes. And it's something that within the scenario that we have, we should be able to take care of all that, because if the kids are in my class and they're working out in my class, I can get everything I need in my class and they can go play multiple sports. So it's kind of the best of both worlds for, the kids get to play multiple sports, and, we don't end up with bad relationships with other coaches on campus because we're not telling our kids not to play different things. Actually, it's quite the opposite. Sometimes at the places I've been, there's been people, kind of telling kids to be a little bit more sports specific in other sports outside of football. So, yeah, I encourage multi-sport athletes, and we have a few on our team. We have a few that do multi-sports at the same time. Like some of our best players are going to run track and do weightlifting, and we find a way to get them to do both and practice both without putting too much strain on the body. We got to be careful with when they're running certain events, what lifts we're doing in and around that time. But we have kids that are weightlifters and track athletes, so we definitely encourage it at the school I'm at, and every school I've been at. It's my philosophy to encourage it. Um, yeah, Coach O'Malley, we so like I said earlier in the live stream, we went from odd back to even towards the end of the year, and the reasoning for that was we had a lot of new players. We were, we were we were having to do some things that to me I felt like with our old 4-2-5 stuff going back to even front stuff, I can control where I'm putting a three technique and where the bubbles are, and I can take bubbles away with D line movements and some things that it was just for where we were and what we wanted to do. Knowing that we were preparing for a playoff game that we were already in, after week 4 because of the playoff system, and we knew we drew an opponent that we were very comparable to, and we knew that round 2, if we got past round 1, we'd draw an opponent that we were very comparable to. So, so we had to kind of figure out after the first couple of weeks, say, hey, what do we really need to do here? And so, we progressively morphed back to 4-2-5 stuff. We started, we started by playing an extra linebacker and just kind of moving the 3-3 stack front, away from a side and creating a 4-man front that way. And then we gradually got back to full 4-2-5 stuff with a 3 technique and a shade. And we didn't have to change anything on the back end. We went from split field coverages earlier in the year to actually playing a little bit of rip blizz match in the middle of the year with a lot more man free and man concepts in the middle of the year, to try and get our kids to stop thinking and just run around and play. Like I said, it was just on top of the pandemic and everything else that was going on, it was just a weird time for us in our program because, I had 4 or 5 first-time players come out as seniors, 2 or 3 basketball players, a track kid, and kids that were really good athletes. They were really good athletes that would have been really good football players for us, but it was their first year playing. So, trying to grasp what we were doing on defense and learning run fits and split field coverages and pattern match. And it was just a little bit too much for those kids, but they were kids that they needed to be in a rotation at corner or linebacker because they were as good as we had. So, we had all of a sudden all these kids that had never played football before, for us or varsity football in general. And, we had to get to a point during the season where it was like, hey, let's take some things off their plate and let them play a little bit. And we did that for 2 or 3 games. And then we gradually started, talking to the guys and saying, hey, can we go back to, you think you guys will be able to going back to playing, even if it's just a base part of our, our 2 read stuff, our 1 3-by-1 coverage. And, all the kids were in agreement. They said, look, coach, we want to go back to it. We feel like we can do it. We need to go back to it. What we're doing right now is not enough. So we went back and started adding small parts of our split field coverage and, stuff in again. And it was good to us. And, like I said, it got us on the board with some W's and got us in a situation in a playoff game that, we had a 24-21 lead and got outplayed in the second half. So hats off to the team that we played. But, it was just a really interesting season. Let's say that. I'm glad that we got through the whole thing. I'm glad that our kids actually got 11 games, I think, or something like that. No, I'm sorry, 10 games, 8 regular season, and then 2 playoff games. So we actually got 10 games, so our kids didn't miss any games. And like anything else as a coach or a head coach or somebody that's in this business, it was, excuse me, it was another chance to learn something different, something new, we had to learn how to do things differently in the locker room and how to meet differently and try and avoid all the scenarios to where, contact tracing would be an issue. And, we, just like the NFL and other places, we lost guys on the fly, that were contact traced and lost them on a Wednesday or a Thursday of a game week, and you had to put another guy in. And so just just getting through the season and dealing with all the things that we had to deal with was, you know, a bonus in itself. And then being able to, to kind of adapt and do. Our offensive coaches did a great job, changing some things on the fly after week 3 and putting our kids in position to win games. And then defensively, I feel like we did a pretty good job sorting some things out and then finding the young kids that we like and getting them involved in the game plan, little by little. But to answer your question, Coach O'Malley, I want to be odd for some of the reasons I mentioned in the the 3 high safety video, or the broken stack video, and then the mint front video. We talked about it where we want to be odd for a lot of reasons. I like odd fits our kids at my school the best. It's easier to find linebackers and safeties than it is to find 1 techniques and 3 techniques. It's more speed on the field to try and eliminate explosive plays. I think the center is somebody that needs to be attacked in high school football and demand double teams and demand help. So, odd fronts can help attack the center. I think your ability to blitz with only 3 down and 8 stand-ups, I think your ability to blitz gets a little bit better. And I still think odd is different. I think offensive coordinators want to see even. I think they want to see a 3 technique and a 1 technique and and they don't want to see odd all the time. So so we want to be odd. We certainly I want to be odd, but I've got to do some research to get the stack stuff that we had been playing, which actually, even though it was odd front, it was more of an even theory in a way because we were trying to fit it like a 6-man box, kind of like our 4-2-5 stuff, and play the same split field coverages. So it was odd front, but it was very static in nature. We moved out of it a little bit, but we didn't play enough shades and fronts, and we didn't break the stack enough with our backers. So I'm looking at ways that we can be a little bit more dynamic in our front. And then I'm always contemplating the video I did the other day. I explained how, we play with 3 safeties on the field, but we're not a 3 high safety defense. And what I mean by that is we play with 3 safeties and kind of nickel personnel every down. But we're more TCU or than anybody else. As to, we play with that nickel personnel. It's not 3 high safeties like Iowa State, made in vogue. And now you're seeing a lot of different teams out there playing 3 high safety stuff. So we're a 3 safety team, but we're not a 3 high safety team. So one of the things that I've always been looking at is, can we play the 3 high structures? We played a version of 1 this year, but it was a passing down deal for us. Can we play 3 high structures as a base? Because we're always going to have those types of kids. And, that's what made Iowa State so successful, is they got away from even after Matt Campbell's first year and John Haycock's first year. They got away from what they've been, what they know, what they do, because it doesn't fit their kids. So certainly in the offseason, looking at all of our odd stuff again and how we can make it better. Some varsity basketball, baseball players that play football, it's the same thing for them. I mean, if they, we don't have a basketball class. They report to me in our weightlifting class. It's not even a football class. I don't have a football class. I have weightlifting classes. So they report to me in their weightlifting classes, and then what they do is they lift during the day, and then after school they go play their sport. So they don't come to our off-season football stuff. And then when we start, the state allows us to do some 7-on-7 stuff. If we join the state association, we're allowed to actually coach some 7-on-7 stuff and do some stuff. So when we have all our kids fill that stuff out and we join, we'll start doing going into February, March, and April, 2 days a week later at night at 4:30 or 5 o'clock. As we can find daylight, we start to do some 7-on-7 stuff. So that's how we do it. First thing I look at, Trey, is special teams. I look to see how teams play on special teams. I look to see what their kickoff coverage is like, how hard those kids play. I look to see what their return schemes are like and how well blocked and schematically, what they're doing. Then when you go to offense and defense, you look to see how good they execute. How much are they carrying? How much are they doing? Are they doing a million things, but they really don't do any of them good? That's usually a sign that a team is not coached very well. Do they do a couple things and do them really well? Are their execution, the reads, the quarterback reads, where the back hits, how they block things, the leverage they get. And that's a strange comment, Abdul, but all we run is shotgun offense. So whether you're trying to be funny or not, I'm not really sure, but we only run shotgun stuff. So, it's just, again, it's just, something you got to get comfortable with. And for us, it's always trying to find that way to get in that comfort zone. So, coaching wise, yeah, sometimes it can be hard if teams are I don't look at winning and losing. I don't look to see how well a team is coached from a winning and losing standpoint, because like I said, sometimes in high school, the winning and losing is inevitable. I played one of the better coach teams we play this year is 1-9, but they're as good a coach as anybody around. And, it's something that, they're not as talented as other people. They play some teams that are a lot better than they are talent-wise, but they're as well coached as anybody. Their schemes are good. The execution of the schemes with the talent that they have is very good. They put, one of the things I look at all the time is it's all good, bro. One of the things I look at all the time is how much stress does that coach put on me? Yes, sir, John. How much stress does that other team put on me as a coordinator during the week? So, how many things am I worried about? Am I worried about some things that really are going to stress how we play? Some things that really put us in conflicted situations, whether it be with our reads, our coverages, our fits. That's the first thing I look at schematically. And then as far as the kids are concerned, it's about how hard they play, how well they do certain things. Do they take care of the football? How many penalties do they have? That's usually a way you can kind of tell if a team is well coached or not. So, are you familiar with two techniques, trailing, pulling guards? Yes, we are familiar with that. Normally, two techniques are going to get back blocked by a center. So, when you talk about following pulling guards, you're going to have to beat a back block or get back. If you're talking about playing flexed a yard or two off the ball and mirroring or mirroring or following those guys like the old Desert Swarm or flex defense. Yes, I'm familiar with that also. But two techniques are usually going to be back blocked by the center when you're facing gap schemes or pull schemes. So you're either going to try and get skinny and beat the back block, or you're going to hump the block of the center across to the other side. So, yes, I'm familiar with it, and yes, we try to gain a guy by dealing with the center certain ways when we see pull schemes. How do you handle a team running a base 4-2 with one high and a rover safety playing in the box? Mainly. Depends on the formations we're in. If they're one high, they probably, if they're one high, it's probably tough for them to play quarters. If they're 7 in the box to one back stuff, it's got to be some type of man-to-man or man-free, or somebody's got to remove at some point. If you're 2x2 and they're 7 in the box, one high, somebody's uncovered somewhere. Normally, if they try to get 7 in the box to 2x2, it'll be out of a 2-high safety structure, and they'll either, play some type of loose off man with the corners and the safeties, or, maybe they'll play a cover 2 concept. But certainly familiar with teams that try to keep 7 in the box, to stop the run. And we've attempted that at times because, like I said, in high school, sometimes the talent from team to team is so dramatically different that you've got to kind of change some things that you're doing and put, we like to call it, putting band-aids on bullet holes. Um, when you play a one-back team and you've got to load the box with that many people, you're probably going to have trouble winning that game because, if you can't cover down on some things and defend RPOs and quick throws and other things because you have to be so heavy in the box to stop one-back runs, you're probably already in a little bit of trouble personnel-wise. So, the thing to keep in mind sometimes in high school is it's schemes aren't as important as you think they might be, even though we all love them, because the bottom line is you just can't do certain things. You can't do certain things that college and NFL teams do. So is that no, that's not the same. That's not. No, I'm thinking of the one in Cincinnati. My bad. Let me go back up here, guys. I'm sorry. What are your thoughts on depth in terms of allowing certain players to do certain jobs? Is that something you've done or not? You talking about within your you talking about playing guys both ways? Or you talking about guys only having certain positions or certain jobs, or Landon? How are you like in certain packages? Okay, so we are the past 3 to 4 years at the school I'm at, we haven't played a bunch of guys both ways. We played some skill guys both ways at times, but we've tried not to start guys both ways. And we are now leaning towards going back to playing guys both ways. And the toughest thing with playing guys both ways, in my opinion, is the way you have to structure your practices. I think you need to cut your playbook down immensely and only carry the base fundamental things you think you need to win games. You can't really expand on your playbook because those kids aren't going to get anywhere near as much time on both sides of the ball or on either side of the ball. So, but I'm also tired of losing games where some of your best athletes and players are on the sideline and you're playing some other kids at positions that aren't the best player at that position. They just happen to be the best player because the best players are playing the other side of the ball. So, thinking about going back and playing guys both ways again. Or philosophy from an offensive perspective, what do you think when you see press man coverage? Is it a concern? See kids play up and be physical even if they struggle. It's a concern on offense, certainly. Wide receivers on offense have a hard time, in my experience. In high school, if a corner is decent in press coverage, wide receivers have a hard time getting off press coverage and beating press coverage. Teaching them leverage and where to attack and footwork and hands and things that they need to do is tough for wide receivers. From a defensive standpoint, yeah, as a defensive coordinator or coach, if a kid struggles athletically, you get a little bit nervous putting them up there, but like all the great ones will say it, and Nick Saban will say it all the time, press coverage eliminates a lot of the route tree. So, when you get up there and play press coverage, you're eliminating a bunch of the routes that you could probably see, and now you can narrow down the routes that corner, even though he's a little bit not inclined athletically to play press coverage, you can kind of narrow down the routes he's going to see and really get good at defending, the 3-4 routes he's going to see the most playing press coverage. And a lot of kids are a little bit more comfortable. Backpedaling is not a natural thing. Opening your hips and transitioning to do different things is not as natural. So some kids play better from press coverage, and it forces sometimes the offense into some low percentage throws. So I'm a big fan of press coverage and playing it as much as we possibly can, even with kids that aren't athletically as inclined to do so. I've seen a lot of good quarterbacks play both sides of the ball. Cuff Daddy, we recruited a kid when I was coaching in college. I thought he was actually probably should have been a scholarship player, but we got him at a non-scholarship school with a pretty good academic package. But recruited the kid from Tyler, Texas. Never forget Josiah Mooney. To this day, I'll never forget his name. I watched a film. He was playing quarterback and running option and midline option stuff, and then he was playing Mike linebacker on defense in Tyler, Texas. and we were a school in New York, so I was well aware of. Uh, Obviously, I played all my football in New York, my high school football in New York, and I was well aware of high school football in Texas. And when I watched the film, I could not believe that we had a chance to get this kid. I could not believe that he was not a scholarship kid because he was good on both sides of the ball and so physical and just such a great football player. But after I moved to Florida, one of the things I found out was there's so many of those kids that are really, really good high school football players that they're just for whatever reason, size, speed, maybe grade. Sometimes this kid wasn't a grade issue at all, but they're just not scholarship players. They end up being, there is such a thing as a really good high school football player, and a kid that's not a college guy. He's not a scholarship guy. He's just a really good high school football player. So um, I've seen quarterbacks play both ways. I think the big thing, you better have a backup that you really like, and you better have a contingency plan after that. We got down to we played a game this year with a 10th grade wide receiver who came to us as a quarterback last year as a JV player, but then we moved him to wide receiver, and he's a kid that I would like to play wide receiver and corner or safety because he's one of our better athletes with some really great football acumen. He gets it, he understands it, and he's got it. He's got moxie. We ended up playing him at quarterback, and then after we played him at quarterback in a game that we lost 18-14, but he put us in position to win. We actually thought about keeping some packages for him to play quarterback. So I've seen it before. I'm a little bit opposed to it most times, but if I have 3 or 4 kids that I feel can run an offense, I'll do. I'm not opposed to doing it, but you'd like not to if possible. Would following guards work better from a 3 technique? Yeah, I mean the 3 technique. It's tougher. It's tougher for them to back block a 3 technique. So as far as following guards and things like that, I think a 3 technique's a little bit tougher to back block. I think uh, putting somebody on the nose and maybe playing with 4 eyes or double 3 techniques like a bear front makes it a little bit easier because now you're kind of putting the offense in a situation where you've got to get all solo blocks or all one-on-one blocks. So um, it's all good stuff. That's what we do, press and send 5 or 6 a lot. We either go 0, cover 1. Yeah, I mean, the man stuff is good when you're sending 5 or 6 and you're trying to create havoc on defense. It's not bad at all, but I think sometimes you're going to want more zone man or zone eye integrity instead of man eye integrity because of run game. And like I said, this year for us, and I've leaned this way for a long time in high school, but to me, even the area that we're in Florida, high school football is about 90% run, if not 85% run the majority of the time. You talk so much about coverage and things like that, and at the end of the day, get good in your run fits. Stop explosives. See if you can defend the post and the fade and the balls that go over the top. And as far as the passing concepts are concerned, don't get so concerned with those because you won't see a lot of good teams that can do that to you. The first way you're going to get beat is if you can't stop the run. So as much as I like playing man, as much as I like playing press man, we send 5 or 6 and play a lot of zone coverage behind both of those when sending 5 or 6, just so we can be solid against the run. Yeah, eye discipline's a big one, Landon. I did a video on that a couple weeks ago on some things we had to try and do at practice to fix eye discipline. I think that's everywhere. That's not you. That's not your coaching staff. That's not your high school. That's everywhere. It's hard to teach kids how to look at a key, understand what a key is because, unfortunately at the lower levels, that's not being taught. It's tough for those guys when there's only when you're coaching Pop Warner or middle school ball and there's only 2 coaches and you're trying to get an offense and a defense to line up. I get it. I understand it. But as a high school coach, it's very frustrating for me because those things, eye discipline, reading keys, visual keys, pressure keys, those things don't get taught. So when you get kids on defense, you got to teach them everything. So it's a little bit frustrating. When you play gunner pistol alignment teams and they do a lot of counter GT, how do you like to defend it? We are 3-3 stack defensively. That is where we struggle the most this year. You got a couple different things you got to think about. Obviously, if it's counter GT and they're getting extra bodies to the front side, you got to figure out how to get extra bodies to the front side. So, whether that's linebackers running really fast over the top or trying to chase things down from the backside of the stack, the 4-eye or the 5 or whatever you're playing with your front. Um, you've got to uh, figure out how you're trying to defend those things. And then if they can run any bash or keep or read theories, now you got to figure out if you're playing your linebackers fast, then you probably got to sit your defensive ends. If you're trying to chase your defensive ends with pullers to get the ball to go somewhere else, then you probably need to sit backers on the backside for pull. The front side of it as a gap scheme, are you trying to spill it and make everything go wide and run to it? So a couple different ways you can play it, but we struggled immensely this year with gap schemes in even and odd. So, it's tough for us. That is what we need to figure out, how to play the best players and not where they. Yeah, obviously you got to be in conditioning's a factor. Hoping they don't get hurt. They got to be in better shape. They got to have a lot more dog in them to play both ways, and you got to find those kids that want to play both ways. That's the most important thing. You talking about number 2 for me, Abdul, on my varsity number 2? It's interesting you say that, John. Power to the 3 technique for us, not power away from him. Power to the 3 technique, getting double teamed and getting a 3 technique to understand how to attack the post player, and then get hips in the hole and defeat double teams. Is for me at least, when we don't have a quality 3 technique that's heavy enough in the ass to handle double teams, we struggle tremendously with it. And again, it's because a lot of kids don't strike. They don't play with their hips well enough to attack the post player as a 3 technique and then feel the double team coming. So a lot of reasons, in my opinion, why we don't. But I am glad for you that you have 3 techniques that can play power. Power at our 3 techniques we have struggled with a little bit, and some of that has to do with size and strength, but I think it also is a technique thing sometimes when kids don't understand how to attack the post player. So, yeah, we have a certain amount of time that we can do contact during the week. This was the first time ever in my career I didn't even give out practice pants. We practice in shorts every day, and we thudded up everything. We almost rarely went to the ground, and all of our tackling drills were done on either thudded up or our gator roll, and some of our other tackling stuff that we do was done on pads or bags. So, and I don't feel like it physically hindered us in any way. I don't feel like that's the reason we struggled. So, definitely limited in contact. I think everywhere across the country now. Coach quarterbacks. We haven't had a good quarterback since I've been high school. Seems like they don't do a great job. Yeah, quarterback's tough. You got to get a lot of time with them. You got to get them when they're ninth graders and develop them, and hopefully develop them in a scheme that stays consistent. I think a lot of times for quarterbacks, they go through so many different schemes. They go through so many different schemes, and there's no consistency in what they're doing, and you got to have consistency in their drops and their footwork and their reads in the run game, and even ball exchange and ball handling stuff. So it's tough with quarterbacks, but again, like anything else, you got to work it. You got to be willing to put the time in, and I think some rules help a little bit now with some 7-on-7 stuff that we're allowed to do in the off season. If you focus on running an offense and teaching a kid, and you're not doing that to try and win 7-on-7 tournaments, it all depends on what you're doing it for. So, but it's tough. It's tough to find good quarterbacks. It's tough to find kids in high school that have the skill set to do all those things. The brains, the smarts, the height, the release, the arm strength, all the things that you need to play quarterback. That's tough. And I mean, hell, look at colleges. I mean, colleges live and die at the quarterback position. Look at Georgia. As great of the recruiting classes as Georgia's had, and this year they've lost 2 games to Alabama and Florida, and probably a lot has to do with they can't find the right guy at quarterback. Look at the NFL teams that can't find the right guy at quarterback. It's not easy, and especially not in high school. So, angle 7, but what do you? What are you talking about, David? Angle 7 and buys you some coverage freedom. Talking about cover 7 with slant and angle stuff up front, um, or and it depends on what you're playing against. If you're playing 21 personnel with a tight end and you're flat foot reading a free safety, um, oh, gotcha, David. If you're playing quarters coverage versus 21 personnel and you're flat foot reading a safety at 8 yards, I think you better expect him to get in the fit. That's why you're playing quarters. One of the reasons you're playing quarters is to get a 9-man box versus 21 personnel. Otherwise, if that free safety can't maybe not be a part of the initial fit, but if he is not an extra guy close to the line of scrimmage making plays, you might as well play him in 3 deep in the middle of the field because you're not getting anything out of him. Quarters was meant to get that 9th guy in a box, and then coverage-wise, it was actually meant to get a double team on the best receiver on the field based on the release of number 2. But if number 2 went vertical back in the old option days with Homer Rice and guys and guys that were so good, Darrell Royal and guys like that were so good at running option, and then play action passes became a deal, and they had to figure out a way to get an extra guy to the box but also defend the vertical. So quarters coverage was a way to do all that. So if you're going to play quarters, you definitely need a safety that can get involved. Tougher to find in high school, but you can find them in your program. So how do you dedicate much time watching film? I used to be found the info, just went over the kids' heads. Yeah, it depends. We've been different every school I've been at, Alex. There's first school I was at for a long time. We spent a lot of time watching film. The kids really grasp it. They grasp a lot of the concepts. And then the last 2 schools I've been at, we watch more film now at this school than I did at the previous school. But the setup had a lot to do with that. What the setup is, how good the setup is to watch film on a computer, laptop, projector. There's no doubt that different kids process information differently and they retain information differently. And if you're not getting a lot out of your film sessions, then you might be wasting time doing film sessions. So, what are some of my favorite 2-route passing concepts my team needs to incorporate 3-step drop game out of flex bone? Any ideas? We're a big snag corner team, so if it's 2-man snag game or snag flat, if it's 3-man snag game or snag corner flat, flood concepts, vertical with 10-yard outs or things like that. I think you got to pick and choose if you're a flex bone team where you're going to attack and how you're going to attack, because you probably only need to complete a few passes a game, and when you do, they're probably big plays. So, like I said, snag corner, hitch corner, snag flat, bench out routes with a vertical, things like that. We've tackled him in close. Haven't had much problem with COVID, but we only practice Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, occasionally Thursday as a checklist. Where are you at, Landon? Hey, King Tynan, how you doing? Yeah, we made it through the we made it through the whole season, and the tackling deal wasn't as much. A little bit had to do with COVID, but it was just a deal that I was kind of tired of going through knee pads and practice pants and kids not having stuff and different things that, at the end of the day, we can practice without that stuff. And I feel like we can practice effectively. NFL and college teams are very rarely in pads. Now, I know they're NFL and college teams, and I would never argue that a high school team is similar, but you can get a lot of things done the right way. And the biggest thing for me is the other thing it promotes is, you want to teach guys to be able to play and get in position to make plays and not always be, 4 feet, 5 feet away from people reaching out saying, Coach, I would have made that tackle. So we put a heavy emphasis on trying to get chest to chest and thud it up, even though we are, in only in uppers. I want to see you get in that good tackling position without going low, and then during games when you need to go low, it's, we work on gator roll tackling. We work on some different things that instinctively as an athlete, when it's time to do that, you need to be able to do it in a game situation. But I want to make sure our close contact tackling and our tackling in the box and things like that is good. And, sometimes I think it's better when you try and thud things up because, you force the kids to to learn that, hey, even though you don't have pads on and you're not going to the ground, don't tell me you would have been able to dive and make that tackle. Get in a better position to show me on film that you're in position to make a tackle. Thank you, Marcos. I'm glad to have you from Brazil. Usually have some representatives either from Brazil or Germany or other parts of the world. So I'm glad you guys like American football. I'm glad I can help you with anything within the game of American football, and I'm glad you watch the stuff that we're doing. So, yeah, but we made it through the season, and we actually went. We didn't go live to the ground, but we went good on good, ones versus ones, and 4 and 6 play settings where we were pressuring and throwing screens and doing some things and getting after it, halfway decent. So it was just one of those things that I just think we can. I think we can practice that way, and I think we can learn to practice that way and still be good and still be physical. I don't do as much individual meetings with kids to talk about goals and things like that. We do it more in a team setting, and I have almost all my kids in class, so I talk to them a bunch individually about a lot of different things and where we're trying to get to, and guys are trying to get bigger and guys that are trying to get faster. I've done it both ways. I've had individual meetings with players after the season, and it was good and I liked it, but at times I felt like kids were giving me answers that I wanted to hear, and I felt like seeing it in action, does a little bit more for me than a kid writing it on an index card or meeting with me. I feel like most kids that want to be part of a program, when they meet with a head coach, they're going to tell the head coach things that he probably wants to hear. And I had so many kids tell me that they wanted to play college ball and they wanted to be a starter and they wanted to do this and they want to do that. And then 3 weeks into the offseason program, I'm watching them work out, lift, and run, and I'm thinking to myself, what, how in the world do you think you're going to do any of the things that you said you wanted to do in our individual meeting? And I just, there was a year or two where I just got frustrated with it and I got away from it. And I think it's still good. I think it's probably something I should get back to doing maybe, but I've survived without it. I've survived without, I have a great relationship with my kids, and I talk to a lot of my kids every day in the classroom, in the weight room, um, about what we're trying to do, how we're trying to do it. And so I can see that go both ways. But I think your quarterback always has to make pre-snap reads. Our offense for years was predicated on the quarterback making all the decisions with pre-snap reads to take access or give throws, and then post-snap RPO reads to put the football in the hands of the person that it should go to based on how the defense is playing. So, unless you're playing at a place that has a lot of great talent around it and the quarterback is just a game manager that has to hand the ball off and not turn it over, I think all the best offenses in the country, when you look at, how dynamic some of them are athletically, I think they all revolve around a trigger guy that's really good and does all the things that he needs to do, whether it's college, whether it's Kyle Trask or Mac Jones, or whether it's the NFL and it's Kyler Murray and and Aaron Rodgers and Pat Mahomes. I mean, they're all different to an extent. How they play is different to an extent, but those guys all do the things that you need to do to win games, and that's that's the biggest thing for your quarterback. Your quarterback needs to be a winner. I've always tried to preach that, and quarterback should also. I've been in so many scenarios that are different. Your quarterback should also have the thickest skin on the team because he's the guy that the coach is going to ride. My best years have been when my quarterback, I could, light up one side, down the other. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't take it personal. He doesn't do, and he never lets anybody see him sweat. And then I've had years where, my quarterbacks are, not as emotionally stable with stuff like that, and yelling gets them erratic and gets them all over the place. But as a coach, that's where, one of the things you got to learn as a coach is how to coach different players. So, um, you know, I think your quarterback's going to be making a ton of pre-snap reads. That's just me. Um, I think this year, Albert, we my offensive coordinator did a good job of trying to carry two schemes as far as blocking schemes, depending on whether we were playing even or odd stuff. Um, he would try and carry two schemes in that he really liked, and he tried to cover every scenario with every front and shades and how we got to get things blocked and how we got to pass protected. So I was a big fan of what they did, what we did this year offensively with that stuff. I used to carry four schemes in, and we ran them no matter what. We were, try to be a tempo team and um, we weren't a check with me team. We were a quarterback orientated. Here's the play. The play's got 3 to 4 different options in it. Tempo stuff, access throws, RPOs. So I used to carry 4 schemes into a game, but we never, our guys did a great job this year of covering for our offensive linemen and our backs every scenario. If the front is shaded like this and it's shaded like this, they did a great job of making in-game adjustments. So I'm really happy with what our offense did this year. But yeah, as far as plays, you got to be careful. You can get crazy with plays, and you can bring in. That's why when you self scout on offense or defense, the thing you got to ask yourself is, excuse me, at the end of the day, for all the offense you're trying to carry, how much did you call it? So, you'll go back at the end of the season and you'll look and you'll say, man, I called that play 4 times or 6 times, whatever it is. Well, if you called it 4 times out of 600 plays, is it really something you need to carry, or is it just something you want to carry? So, the volume of what you carry and the plays that you run, I think needs to be looked at. And I think you need to sometimes in the offseason shrink the volume down to what you actually, the things that you do that work, get it here and focus on the techniques and fundamentals needed to do these things correctly and be as time efficient and as cost effective as possible doing that. Oh, great. First winning season's awesome. It's good when you can coach kids at a young level and then get them again later on. I think that's where you start to see some really good, growth when you saw those kids at one age group and then you get to see them down the road winning, playing for you and winning again. It's awesome. Back in the old days, Oren, yes, we did. Our quarterback used to be able to flip plays. He used to be able to make opposite checks. He used to be able to check into simple passes or runs based on what we were doing. Once we got into up tempo, no huddle up tempo spread stuff, hurry up, no huddle stuff, we got into a position where it was less audibling, and it was more. The play has built-in answers based on the numbers in the box, the runs, the coverages, and he always had a chance. The quarterback always had a chance before the snap and after the snap to do something with the ball. So the game has kind of changed from that point. It's not as much for us, not as much audible check with me stuff as it used to be, but used to do that a long time ago. Yeah, when I played in college, we had live colors, dead colors, audibles, all that stuff. So I just think the game's a lot different now. Do you think it's worth making some EDDs online? But yeah, I would think if you want to show your kids, some everyday drills that you want them to do on their own. I think the toughest thing, the toughest thing with that is the little coaching points of making sure they're doing it. Like I know a lot of our kids, even with their stance and their start and their footwork, a lot of our kids don't even know some of the things that they're doing. And when you point it out to them, they have no idea. They're like, no, you try to fix a kid's stance and then you show them either on a video or, on a picture, you show them what their stance looks like. And they're like, man, I never knew. I had no idea it looked like that. Or I had no idea. Or, you tell a kid about his first step or what he's doing. And, so that's the hardest part. If you can't be with the kids, they can do some EDDs that you set up in a Zoom meeting or on video that you gave to them. And, they can understand that, but can they do it? It's just like quarterbacks. You can give a quarterback a whole list of things you want to go out and throw these routes and all these things. But if you're not out there with them, are his drops right? Is he simulating a snap the right way so that the timing doesn't get messed up? Is he taking the proper drops? Is he fundamentally doing all the things he needs to do? So I think that would help Marcos, certainly. If you can't meet or be around your players live, obviously you got to try and do something. But, the tough thing for me would be the actual teaching points behind the EDDs, the little things that you want to preach when those kids, when those guys are making mistakes. So It depends, Coach O'Malley. It depends on what our, you know, depends on how many special scenarios we think we need for 2 point plays. Sometimes our 2 point plays become, just a mixture of our short yardage offense, and we'll go to our short yardage offense and have three or four things that we like in short yardage scenarios. Sometimes there are certainly packages and plays because of the constricted field. And the defense that you're going to see, you want to have some things drawn up simply for that. But I would say we probably carry one or two per se each week, and then and then other than that, it's base offense. We're also a muddle huddle team, so a lot of times, if I like to look in muddle huddle, my 2 point plays become my muddle huddle stuff. So um, it's different for everybody, but I would say we probably one or two each week that we carry as things that we know if we get a chance on 2 point, we're going to run those things. But I'm sure some people are probably different than me, but we only carry one or two that we work on in that setting. And then there's a lot of times there's 2 point plays. I've had some success with 2 point conversions that were just part of our base offense that we just ran because we liked in those scenarios. We knew the coverage we were getting, and we knew the formations that would dictate certain coverages that they played in short yardage or goal line, and we knew the goal line plays that we like. So there's a lot of times we went in and did it that way. And then you see so many other things. Like I play so many teams that their 2 point play is too tight, three backs in the backfield running a blast play or whatever. It's not really, it's a short yardage play and it's effective, but it's not really schemed to be a quote unquote 2 point play. It's just the best that they've got to move the ball 3 yards. I think in the college game and the NFL game, I think that's where it gets so specific with matching personnel and things like that, 2 point plays actually become a really big deal. Time management rules or do's or don'ts. How do you approach prepare? Time management, how Carmine, time management from a practice standpoint, from an off-season study standpoint, from my own personal standpoint of managing things. Which way are you talking about? Coach Gardner, all is good. Nowhere near the grill aficionado that you are yet, but I did barbecue a few times last summer after getting a grill for my wife wanted the grill for Mother's Day. So everything is well. I hope you guys are doing good. I think I saw on Twitter you had a really good season, won 9 or 10 games. So congrats to you. 8th year of coaching at a new school. We have an older coach who hates to let the JV get any momentum against the varsity and makes them play slow. How do I help? Hell, James, if I was at a place where the JV could push the varsity, I'd be gung-ho all about it, because obviously you got a chance to be better down the road with those JV kids than you do with the varsity kids that you got. So I'd be hammering the tempo and everything, letting those varsity guys know that the JV's whipping their ass and kind of an eye opener for those varsity kids to say, hey man, these younger kids are playing better than you are. They're tougher than you are. They're more physical than you are. And you know what? Maybe we should be playing with them. I would love to have that scenario. It's very rare at the high school level. It's very rare that the JV can push the varsity and be competitive with the varsity. A lot of times they're just a look that's getting beaten up all the time. But hell, I'd love it. You're not wrong in thinking that way. I'd love it if I was the head coach. King, we talked about it early on this year. We made multiple changes. This year in our schemes. I went from odd to even. I went from split field coverages to one high stuff to split field coverages to one high stuff to man stuff back to split field coverages. I normally don't recommend it in a regular season, but in the pandemic situation we were in with no spring game and no real kickoff classic and no scrimmages or opponents, I felt like we didn't really have a choice to make changes because what we were doing, we didn't found out week 2 or week 3 that what we were doing was just absolutely not good with our kids. So I'm usually not a fan of wholesale changes during the season, but this year I was okay with it because it was a little bit different. You know, Carmine, that's I think I think time management is something that you have to go through as a coach, and you've got to kind of I think you've got to figure out situations for yourself, go through them, and figure out things that you know find situations that you did a good job in, and situations you did a bad job in, and I think you can study time management and you can look at all the things you want to look at, but the game happens so fast in the heat of the moment that at that point you better be able to do some things by um, gut feeling and been there before and just understanding the ebbs and flows of games and also just understanding that we're all going to make mistakes with time clock management. We're all going to waste timeouts that we didn't need. Um, to waste early on. We're all gonna get in situations where we could have we had a game this year that we lost with 8 seconds left, and one of the things that we went back and looked at is we had a third down. Uh, we had the lead with about 3 minutes left in the game, and we had a 3rd and 13, and uh, my offensive coordinator was going to run the ball, and I told him to try and throw it and get a first down because I didn't know the other team had just come out in a heavy package that we could not stop, and I felt like if they got the ball back, they were going to do the same thing, and I didn't have enough of a chance to adjust personnel or make changes to it. So I told them, look, you need to try and get a first down here and win the game that way. And um, we didn't get the first down, and we threw an incomplete pass, which is irrelevant in this conversation. The point is that incomplete pass stopped the clock, and the team ended up beating us with 8 seconds left. In said scenario, if everything is the same and we take the time down to punt instead of the clock that stopped, would they have had 8 seconds left to score the way they scored? Hypothetically speaking, if that scenario is the same, then no, they wouldn't have had 8 seconds left. But if we run the ball, they either have to take a timeout then, or if they don't take a timeout and they get the ball back with less time and timeouts, they may not call the same things, and we may never know. Hell, they may have thrown the ball and scored on the second play and scored with a minute left instead of 8 seconds left. So obviously, all you can do is second guess that situation. We lost the game with 8 seconds left. Obviously, do a better job defending certain formations and things and tackle the ball better and put your kids in better situations, and you won't have to worry about that. But as a coach, all you can do is go back and think about the things you could have done to help. And that's one of the things you look at. My offensive coordinator was like, yeah, I was thinking about, running the ball, make them take a timeout or do something else. And well, timeouts, really weren't a deal that hurt us. What hurt us was we couldn't stop what we needed to stop. So yes, they had 8 seconds left to score, but the situation is so different if you do it a different way. If you go back and look at it and say, if we did it that way and everything played out the same, yes, I agree. But if we did it a different way, the situation wouldn't have played out the same. So you'll never know. So I hate playing teams that switch like that. It's tough to get a feel for what they want to do. It's tough to get a feel for how they want to do it, especially second round of the playoffs. You'd rather get a beat on a team that's what they do and how they do it. And so, excuse me, I always hate the wild, wild west type teams that kind of are all over the place on offense or defense. But that's just my opinion. Minnesota with the Chatfield Gophers. We play Caledonia every year. Watch out next year. The winning streak is over. Nice. Nice. I don't know how much formation variations we'll get into next year. Obviously, you always want to wrinkle a couple things formationally. We played with a inline tight end way more this year than we ever have. So I think we want to build off of that. We played some double tight stuff this year that those kids are both returning players that'll come back. So I think we want to build off that. But you know, I, uh-oh. I think now what we want to try and do is wrinkle the presentation a little bit, but run the same plays with a little bit different presentation. Yes, Landon, I think there are some teams that do that on purpose, depending on how drastic the schemes are. I think it's tough to go from single wing to flex bone to hurry up, no help spread. some of those schemes are so drastic in nature, and the techniques that the kids need to use are so drastic in nature. But I think you could go from wing T with wing T principles to then go to spread and have, gap schemes and buck sweep and things that you can run in spread that are consistent. So I think there's certain schemes that lend themselves to being able to do more than one throughout the season with carryover. But at the same time, I don't think anybody. I think there are some teams that do it for sure. I've seen enough of it in throughout the course of my career, but there's got to be a reason why they're doing it. If they feel like their personnel doesn't match up, so they got to be different and keep you on your toes. Or, the neat thing would be if they now come out in this playoff game and can run all three versions of those offense and make you defend all three of them. That would be a real pain in the neck, in my opinion. So, all right, guys, gonna get ready to kind of wrap it up here. I appreciate you guys for being on. Didn't give you a lot of notice that we were going to be on, so I appreciate you guys being on. I think, like I said, for us in the offseason, for me in the offseason on defense, it's going to be a lot of odd three high safety research. I had studied a lot of Iowa State stuff, but now I'm going even further to see if that might be our base, playing three high structures, studying more odd stuff to figure out how we can be more flexible in odd and show some different fronts and make some different adjustments. Sink our teeth into getting better stopping gap scheme runs. How we're going to do that, not really sure. Within the odd stuff, are we going to play? I investigated some of the Georgia Mint stuff, and so all those things that I'll be diving into offensively. I think we're going to continue to dive into the gap scheme world and playing with inline tight ends and some Y off, maybe some more read game out of those gap schemes. So ran a lot of GT counter this year, so I think we want to. We had some bash stuff. I think we want to go further into the bash world. Back away sweep stuff and other things that make it difficult on defenses to kind of put some constraint plays and I think we'd like to dive a little bit deeper into the RPO world. We were RPO eccentric heavy for years, and then I gave the offense up to a guy that was less RPO this year, but some of our best passing numbers were in RPO stuff. So I think we want to take our GT scheme, and we've got a really good 10th grade tackle. Got a really good 10th grade tackle that we absolutely love, and I think we'll probably go back to some more tackle trap, tackle wrap things where he's on the move, doing some things because he's a dynamic, versatile player. So I think we're going to want to RPO off of that stuff. So, but like I said, the offseason is an interesting time. I love studying. I love looking at things that we need to do analytically and breaking some things down. So that's why I wanted to get on here and talk about that tonight. Obviously, a couple of you guys have seen them. I did, a video every day this week, or almost every day this week. We did a video on breaking the stack, and then we did a video on getting to the mint front from 3-3 personnel in our defense, how we would do it. And then I did one today on a dart lead play versus the tight front and how to get extra blockers where you need them using a lead blocker in a tackle wrap scheme. So, so just again, off season for me is more play fast, more YouTube live stuff, trying to work and continue to build on a Patreon site. And guys are now asking about the clinic. I think 2021 clinic is possible. I don't know how early it's possible. It may be, from everything I'm hearing, it may be an April, May, June. It may be a summer deal for us, which wouldn't be the end of the world because we'll have some beautiful weather if we do it on the beach again. But definitely Play Fast Clinic is in the making again. We had such a great year one that we don't want to lose momentum. So I've also been thinking about possibly doing some camps, doing some Play Fast football camps locally in my area, and then maybe seeing if we can branch them out to some different areas. And then I also thought about, I've been thinking about maybe opening, trying to figure out how to open some type of training facility in the off season, to make it a Play Fast training facility where we would work on the things we think kids need to understand to be high school football players or college prospects. So, not only from a weightlifting standpoint, but from a speed and agility standpoint, a movement standpoint, and then the techniques and fundamentals that we feel like everybody's kind of missing out on. almost developing a curriculum per se to say, hey, these are the things that you need to be doing at each position. And, um, obviously that's a far-fetched idea right now, and it's not something that's in the works at all. But and it wouldn't even be so much a schematic deal, as to say we're going to teach, just developing quarterbacks, developing running backs, developing receivers, developing linemen and D linemen and linebackers, and not even so much schematically, but um, just developing players to be able to be good high school football players, and then just trying to grow their knowledge of the game. Um, trying to build the knowledge of the game for kids that they can. It's the only thing that I get upset about now. The kids are such better athletes than we used to be, and um, the size and the strength of the game is so crazy now. But it just drives me nuts how little football acumen kids have, and how so many different nuances of the game are like foreign to some of our kids, like they've never seen them before. Um, for us, a big one that drives me nuts is studying formations and understanding. The other team has certain formations and they have plays and things that they like doing out of those formations. And when we see those, maybe we need to have certain blitzes to those formations, or maybe we need to have certain coverage checks to those formations, and going through with our guys and watching film and practicing it and seeing it in a game on a game night, and they can't remember the sets that we talked about and when the back is here or when the back is here. That to me is the most frustrating thing, because for me that was always the easiest thing. The physicality of at 5'9", 140 pounds, playing receiver, and DB, the physicality of the game was a harder part for me because I was always limited size wise, but the mental part was always the easy part. You look at it, you see it, and you go, okay, when the back line's up there, this is what they like to do. When the wideouts are in this set, this is what they like to do. That part was always so easy that having kids that don't get that part to me is so frustrating. So even if we, develop some type of playfast curriculum that had verbiage and terminology and things like that, just multiple ways to grow the game, and then obviously everything's been coach orientated, that the next step for play fast football is developing players. So um, talking about different RPO ideas, what there I guess it would depend, social stuff, on who you talk to. Duo is a gap scheme with no puller. It's basically power without a puller, which essentially is veer. In my opinion, I think they're both blocked about the same. Probably different theories in how you're doing them, but we actually ran a version of veer and a version of duo that was our read play, because we didn't run zone, and I did it for years and never really cared if it was veer or duo. I learned it as a Zier play, which was basically veer and zone, combined together. And I watched Nevada do it with Colin Kaepernick, and I watched how they blocked it, and I watched the aiming point of the back and the reads they were making, and we took that and turned it into our read game, and then our RPO game off of that, and then we did all the things that the zone teams do. So we split flowed it and we whammed it. We whammed a 3 technique and we inserted it. So I did it for years and never really cared whether it was veer or duo, or to be true duo. I think most college NFL guys are going to tell you it's a 12 personnel or a 21 personnel, or it's a big package with condensed splits, and you're blocking everything down and leaving corners unblocked. And so I think in theory it would be different than someone saying the term veer, but to me it's gap down blocking without a puller. I think it's about as legitimately close to the same play as you could probably argue on, outside of um, philosophically, somebody arguing that veer and duo is different. I would never philosophically argue it's the same when you're talking about a triple option veer team and an NFL duo team. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the rules of the play, the leverage of the blocking on the play are basically identical. You're looking for double teams, you're looking for 2 double teams, and it's obviously we used to struggle. When we'd be running it, we'd be saying, all right, do we want to run it to the big bubble or do we want to run it to the 3 technique? Well, the term duo means double teams. When you run it at the 3 technique, you're going to get 2 double teams. You're going to get a double on a 3 and a double on a 1, depending on the, for us at least as a 10, 20 personnel team. When we ran it at the 1 technique, we ran it at the big bubble, but we lost a double team because because we had the base block, the 3 and a 5 on the backside. So, great question, social stuff, because that is a button pusher topic that people get all bent out of shape about. I could care less either way. I think they're both similar in nature, and I think philosophically, if you want to argue they're different, that's fine too. I know why we ran it and didn't really care what anybody else thought, but it's a hot button topic for sure. So, yeah, hopefully, Coach O'Malley, hopefully 2021, sometime April, May, June. So we'll see. Back depth and alignment is huge, Coach. You know that. I know that. Coaches know that. We all know the tendencies teams have. We know our own tendencies. We know when the back's flat, what to expect. We know when he's deep, what to expect. Even sniffer stuff when he's in line. If he's inside the tackle box or outside the tackle box. If the sniffer gets tighter to the line or deeper. Just all those little things that are so obvious on film to pick up. But the problem is when you get into game scenarios, the kids have to see it, feel it, and play it, because you can. I'm sure you guys are like me. You stand on the sideline and you yell. The formation comes out and you yell jet sweep. The formation comes out and you yell quarterback counter. The formation comes out and you yell sprint out. But at the end of the day, that doesn't, you still do it as a coach because it's kind of how we're wired. But at the end of the day, it doesn't do you any good because you're not the one playing sprint out. You're not the one playing QB counter or playing jet sweep. You're the one yelling it. And the kids on the field are actually the ones that have to understand, okay, that formation means this play's coming. When this play comes, where do I fit in the defense to stop that play? So, how many times you yell on offense what the coverages are, or where the blitzes are coming from, or telling guys who to block. Hey, work to 17, you go to 40. You're not the one blocking. So at the end of the day, they still have to block. So look for another video tomorrow. I think I'm probably going to do one on playing with heavier techniques with your D-line, tighter shades, thicker shades, whatever you want to call it. I think I'm going to do a video on D-line techniques and how to get away with thicker shades in high school. So look for that coming out tomorrow. Look for me to probably do YouTube Live once a week now that the football season is over. If you want to check us out, I've actually got one on there on I've got one on there on either odd hybrid defense or simple 3-4 defense. We used to play a dime package with 4 safeties involved, and it was a 3-4 package that was a slant and angle deal, and then we had some blitzes that were mirrored to each side. But I'd probably have to look at how you're trying to play, what you're trying to play, and how you're trying to play it to fit those runs in the 3-2-6. I'm currently looking at how Iowa State fits all their 3 high safety stuff. I had a pretty good idea, but unless you do it, you're not always sure. So, and then when I see things on paper, when I'm diagramming it up and I see things on paper, I start thinking to myself, well, I wonder if we could fit it like that. And then I watch, and they either get away with fitting it like that, or they either the second, third level players can make plays that maybe we can't. It's pretty good deal. Obviously looking at it, but I was never really sure how they chose to shade their fronts, when they went tight, when they went okie, which is basically for them, a head up nose with a 4 eye on one side, but leaving a 5 on the other. So I was always interested in seeing those things. We've been odd hybrid for a while. There's been some different things. We were a 3-3 stack team that played with left and right safeties and hybrid defenders. We were at times a dime team that was a 3-2-6 in nature. So we played with 4 safeties, so that on both sides of the ball, we basically had 2 nickels down and 2 frees deep, so that no matter where the formation strength or the passing strength came out in, we could play any coverage we wanted to that side. And then we would slant and angle and add a 4th rusher from the weak side. And then we would have 5-man pressures that were mirrored, and then 6-man pressure stuff. So, we had some success with it. It was good to us. It's probably the big boys in D1 and all those guys. It's probably part of a package that they carry that, for us, it was something that when I talk to people all the time in high school, defensive packages in high school are really, really tough to do because most of the time for us, our 11 best guys are our 11 best guys. There are no other. Now, I used to back in the day have some dime stuff where wide receivers would come over and we would limit the coverages we'd play in dime settings, but I would use wide receivers, whether it be later in the game scenarios, trying to get my best athletes on the field in passing situations, or you got a 2 touchdown lead, so you know the ball's going to be thrown. But that was more or less only playing certain static coverages out of it that those kids could play because we didn't have enough time to teach them everything. But there were some games where we used that we called it at that time our Tiger package, our Tiger front, and there were games where we used that as more than just a changeup. We used it as we went in and played defense that way all game. The odd hybrid stuff was good to us. 3-2-6 stuff was good to us. In certain years at times, and the way we played the 3-3-5 was good to us for 2 years, and then we kind of fell apart with it a little bit this year. So, definitely for me, the next thing I'll be looking at is 3 high safety, not 3 safety, 3 high safety to play in. That middle of the field star safety at Iowa State, the Aztec guy from San Diego State, all those scenarios to where you're finding that guy to be a guy that kind of runs the alley and plays 3 vertical in some coverages. So interested in studying that, and that's where I'm going to keep moving forward. But again, appreciate you guys coming out tonight. Appreciate all the questions. Appreciate all the responses and the answers to other questions. Remember to be looking for our videos. Hit the subscribe button, comment, thumbs up, thumbs down. When you like something or don't like something, leave a comment in the comment section. I try to respond to everybody I can in those comment sections. And remember, I say this every time, but I learn sometimes as much from you guys as you learn from me. Interacting like this, asking questions, doing different things. People asking me questions sometimes makes me learn. So I appreciate it. Marcos, thanks for joining us from Brazil. I appreciate it. And I'm glad you guys like American football down there. So I'll see you guys live sometime next week. Look for a video coming out tomorrow. Check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/Coach Mac. I do some scheme videos where it's our kids playing the stuff with our school and using video clips. So until next time, guys, I appreciate it. Remember, you won't play well until you play fast. See you next time.